What's up, guys? Happy Wednesday. I'm your host, Kayla Bundy, and you're listening to the Finding Hope podcast. I hope your day is going so well and that this week has been absolutely incredible. If you are new or if you're a returning listener, I'm so glad you're now a part of this incredible community and this sisterhood of growth, of chasing after being rooted in a hope for more and expectant for things to get better and change and have actionable steps to get us there. This episode is actually inspired by a conversation me and one of my besties were having recently, and she just had mentioned how she noticed the way I deal with being rejected almost in a way. And so I kind of want to talk about today just dealing with feeling unwanted or ignored, and not necessarily rejected by the people close to you, but it's easy to feel ignored and unwanted by strangers or by friends that we haven't built that close connection to yet. And so I just want to talk on it because I think it is something all of us go through, and on a daily basis, it's easy to go up to someone and try to spark up a conversation or make a comment in a group of friends and no one hears you, no one pays attention to you, or they're pretty rude in the way that they decide to respond. So we're going to talk about how to deal with it, how to process it, and how to always be the bigger person and not actually let it affect us. Because it's easy to turn the cheek and say, okay, it's not going to bother me, but it's easy for it to still bother us and for us to feel those emotions of feeling unwanted and unworthy and have imposter syndrome. And so we're going to leave this episode not letting those emotions ever plague us when we do face a not so fun response by people. Psalm 34:18 says, "The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit." I'm not saying we're brokenhearted over here when we get a little bit rejected. However, it can crush our spirit a bit. I know for sure it's not the immediate or maybe ingrained response in us when someone sort of ignores us to just have our spirit filled with joy and filled with strength and abundance and all of these things. And so I want you to know that the Lord is close to you in those moments. He's actually promising to be close to us during those times whenever those emotions start to surface and whenever we feel a little brokenhearted, whenever we feel crushed in spirit. And little story time example there. I mean, this happens a lot, honestly. So I just don't really remember because I feel like it does happen on a normal basis. I think it's just part of life. But there was one time, this was probably a year ago now, and I still remember it. But there was one time where I was on a walk and I saw this woman, and she was sitting outside of some apartment complex or office space, and it was a public walkway. And so I was walking on it. And the name of wherever she was really interested me. And so I saw her there and I just sparked up a conversation, trying to be friendly. And I asked a couple questions. And the way this woman just was so done with me before I even opened my mouth was insane. And it's been so long that I don't remember her exact response, but it was something along the lines of like, "You really think I'm going to talk to you right now? Are you kidding me?" Like, that was sort of how she responded to me. And then there was another time too. I'm just now remembering. I was at a farmer's market and I was kind of going there to just be the hands and feet for the Lord and pray over whoever needed praying. And as I'm walking and I was about to leave, this guy, he was talking to his friend in conversation, and they passed me. Right as he passed me, he said something about really needing painkillers. And so, the nosy person I am, I tapped him and I said, I overheard your conversation. I'm so sorry. I don't know what you're going through, but is it okay if I pray for you? And he was just so taken back. All he wanted was drugs, apparently. I learned that pretty quick. And it was so funny because his response, we were talking and he seemed a little uncomfortable. So I was just, wrapping it up and didn't even pray for the guy with him there anyways. And he literally mid conversation pulls out his phone. No one is on it. I can see it. And just puts it up and goes, "Hi, oh yeah, sorry." And starts pretending to have this phone call. And that was just kind of funny, honestly. And I walked away. I still prayed for him because, he clearly needed the love of God and healing in some way in his life. But I'm sure we can all relate to one of these instances of just saying something or people really meeting us with a rude, inappropriate, and very harsh response. And I know it's so common in just circles where people will talk a lot and someone says something and it gets overlooked, it doesn't get heard. And you can be left feeling really lonely, and you can be left feeling defeated, and you can feel easily tempted to play a victim. Because from the outside, yeah, you shouldn't have been treated that way. However, we are conquerors in the Lord. And I want you to try to view all of those opportunities as, oh, that was actually a way for God to come in and conquer that situation and to remind me that my strength is in Him and my validation is in Him and my worth is in Him and my thoughts, what I have to say, matter to Him. And if they matter to the God of the universe, then that's actually way more powerful than mattering to the person standing next to me or the stranger that I just walked by. What has really helped me, I feel like, just not get in my head about it and feel personally attacked is knowing that I honestly have probably done the same thing, and totally unintentionally. But there are so many times where I don't hear what my friend said, or there are so many times where I feel uncomfortable and I don't feel safe. And so I want to escape whatever that situation is as fast as possible. And with the guy who at the farmer's market pretended to have a phone call, something in his spirit probably didn't feel safe with the love of God that I carried. And I think whenever you can just remove yourself and your personal emotions from that situation, it is so helpful, because you don't know what's on the other side. You've probably been on the other side, and you might be on the other side somewhere down the line. And I know I'm not always the best version of myself to every single human being I'm ever going to encounter. And giving grace for when people don't show me their best selves, because that is normal and it has absolutely nothing to do with me. Also, I think just knowing that it could be something they're going through, but it also could not. And that's okay. Because I do think that I hear this so often, and a very unpopular opinion. It's okay if you don't agree with me. But I feel like whenever people are met with a response that they don't like, they immediately think they're probably going through it and they're projecting onto me. And that can 100% be true in a lot of scenarios, but I don't think that's a good assumption to have for everything and everyone, because a lot of times people aren't treating you that way because they're projecting something or because they're going through it. A lot of times it's not always that deep. Sometimes yes, but I know if I have accidentally offended someone in something and they were to think, oh, I'm really going through it, I'm projecting all of my own emotions onto them in that one instance, that would be really disheartening to me. And I feel like it would immediately remove my voice in that entire situation, because maybe I wasn't really going through it. Maybe it wasn't that deep. Maybe I was just oblivious, and that's it. And so I think when we just assume these things for other people, it can be very dangerous, because most of the time they probably are just unaware and they're probably being oblivious to it, or maybe they just didn't feel like talking. And that sucks, but it's okay. But I think to just project that, oh, they're really struggling right now, or they have all these things that they must be going through that is now being put out on me, is in a way totally making a very strong assumption of where they're at and removing any chance they have to say where they are. And so, in those moments where you aren't necessarily met with the greatest response, just realize it's not that deep. It's really okay. And I think when you overthink it is where a lot of insecurity, doubts, chaos can happen. And that's where the enemy can really just distract us. In the Bible, it talks a lot about iron sharpening iron types of friendships and relationships. And essentially, what that means is both people are sharpening the other one to always improve, always learn, always grow, always evolve, always encourage on a higher path, on a higher route. And if it's not necessarily a stranger that you're dealing with this sort of feeling of being unwanted or ignored, but it's friends or a friend group, I want you to know that it is so normal, and they probably aren't an iron for you, and maybe you're not an iron for them, and that's okay. And I know there's a lot of Christian circles around me even where I don't necessarily feel overly welcome, to say the least. And I have to remind myself and also be reminded that, you know what? If there isn't this mutual appreciation for one another, they probably aren't going to be an iron sharpening iron friendship to me. And I might not be an iron sharpening friendship to them. And you need both. And it shouldn't be me being the iron in this that's sharpening them. It shouldn't be them being the iron that's sharpening me. It has to be both. And so if you feel like a little misplaced, or you're bummed that you don't feel super included in friend groups, just find comfort in knowing that it's probably not an iron sharpening iron friendship. And whether it has to do with them, whether it has to do with you, it truly doesn't matter, because if either part isn't equal, it's not going to be able to sharpen one another. I would encourage you to seek out and pursue those friendships that are more of that, and that you feel like, oh, I'm equally appreciated, I'm equally valued, and they equally want to pour into me as much as I want to pour into them. And we're equally going to call each other higher in these areas, or in areas that maybe feel a little uncomfortable. Because the friendships that I haven't necessarily felt really included in those friend groups, it honestly is friends that I don't feel that iron sharpening iron friendship with. And in the ones that I do, it's so easy, it's so effortless, it's so clear that God's hand is in it. And sometimes you don't always want to grow with the people that God knows you're going to grow the best with. And so I want to encourage you to just be open to that, because it's easy to see things on the outside and think, oh, they would be so perfect as a friend to me, as a mentor to me, as that whole friend group would just be incredible. I know I'd fit right in. It can be easy to kind of think about all these things, but only God knows. And his understanding is way greater than ours. And he knows all their hearts, and he also knows yours. And sometimes there are times where I know, oh, okay, I probably wasn't in those groups because I was way more mature in my faith than they were at that time. And there's other times I'm like, okay, I'm probably not in those groups because my time with the Lord is something that is so beyond important to me. I will never sacrifice. And it's evident that maybe we're not on the same page in that area. Don't try to force friendships, relationships, any sort of groups where it doesn't feel like it's an iron sharpening iron friendship. One of my absolute favorite verses. Oh, it's so good. It's in Romans 8, and it's 35 through 39. It is a little long. Most people just choose a portion of this, but I want to read the full thing because it's so good. It says, "Who shall separate us from the love of Christ? shall trouble or hardship or persecution or famine or nakedness or danger or sword, as it is written, for your sake we face death all day long. We are considered as sheep to be slaughtered. No, in all these things we are more than conquerors through him who loved us. For I am convinced that neither death nor life, neither angels nor demons, neither the present nor the future, nor any powers, neither height nor depth, nor anything else in all creation will be able to separate us from the love of God that is in Christ Jesus our Lord. What a beautiful passage. Oh my goodness. And to know that there's truly nothing that could separate us from his love, his acceptance, his approval, his attention, his desire to listen. It is so wonderful. And this brings such comfort because humans are going to disappoint. We're not always going to feel super included. We're not always going to get the exact response we want from strangers, from friends, even from our closest friends or our family. And it is so beautiful to know that nothing could ever separate us from the love of God. When we don't feel that love in human relationships and we feel the weight of being ignored, we feel the loneliness and isolation of feeling unwanted, knowing that never, ever is even possible to come from God. And those emotions are never going to be rooted in reality when it comes to the way the Lord loves us. And we have that reassurance that he truly is the only supply, that nothing could ever, ever want to take his love, attention away from his sons and daughters. And I just absolutely love how it goes into such detail that neither death nor life, neither hardship, persecution, famine, or nakedness. I think that's a big one. I remember when this verse was read at my church, I did not realize how much I appreciate the details in this passage and the different ounces of it. And I think it's so easy to look at people and make judgments, and you separate yourself from loving them and from accepting them and from wanting to include them based on the things that they've done and based on what they post or how they look in their post or how little clothing they have on or knowing that so-and-so hooked up with so-and-so. And I absolutely love this verse because that's not God. That's not him at all. That's not his heart. That's not him. That was not how he wanted us to be. We are made in his image, and those are definitely from our flesh when we want to separate that love and take that love and remove that love from someone. And it's beautiful to know that God will never remove that love from us. So as we close, I just want to encourage you guys to know that it's probably not that deep. It probably has nothing to do with you. There's a God that loves you so much more than any human ever could. And if it's helpful to talk to a friend about it, journal about it, write these things down. Because if you're in these situations or you're experiencing these sort of circumstances frequently and it's really bothering you, don't just let that fester and bubble up inside of you. Get it out. Call a friend. Write it down. It's okay to not be consumed with it in the moment, but if it is something that really bothers you, talk about it and go to a friend that's actually going to just let you ramble and get it out. Because I think a lot of times when we feel this, we don't always need somebody to fix it for us. We just need to get these things out of our head. And I know for us girls, it's very different. Boys always want to fix. Girls want to talk. But I do think there's such a power in talking things out and just literally having someone there to listen to you as you process. Because Like I said in lots of other episodes, the things that are kept in the dark, the enemy just has so much more power over. And if you're feeling isolated and ignored and unwanted because of the way people are responding to you, and you're keeping that in, that's where the enemy can really use that. And sometimes it literally is just calling a friend or grabbing coffee with a friend and venting or getting it out. And that creates so much freedom. And those thoughts, once they're out, they're out. The enemy loses its power. So sometimes it doesn't always have to be fixed. And you don't always need to figure out, okay, well, how can I feel more included? How can I feel more accepted by these people? How can I stop getting these responses where people are ignoring me? Sometimes it's not just that. Sometimes it's, okay, well, it's life. That's going to happen. And I think if you expect it's never going to happen, it's very crushing when it does. And so just know that, hey, that's life. That happens to literally everyone. You're so not alone. And it's okay to say that you feel those ways to your close group of people in your life. I love you guys. I hope this was helpful. I do hope you don't feel rejected and you don't have all of these experiences with people where you feel a little ignored. That's not the goal. However, the goal is if these are happening, you can feel better about what to do and how to think and removing yourself from that and relying on God to fill that. I love you all, and I will talk to you next week. Bye.